What a weekend it was for the Seattle Mariners. They take 2 of 3 against one of the best teams in baseball, but the road doesn't get any easier as they head up to Toronto for a 3-game set with the Blue Jays. We're going to be talking about it all on today's episode of Locked On Mariners. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Monday, May 16th, 2022, and this is the Locked On Mariners podcast brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am your host, Ty Gonzalez, reporter and editor over at allseahawks.com, joined as always by my co-host Colby Patno, and he's right over there to the side. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dan Gonzalez, that's TANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Be sure to check out the Patreon that we have. That's where we talk about the Mariners even more and also get into some non-baseball talk twice a week. Visit patreon.com/control the zone for more information on that if you are interested. Want more of us. If this is your first time joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, welcome to the show. If you like what you hear, give us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. So Colby, on Friday, I asked you if the Mariners could possibly survive Max Scherzer, and guess what? That's exactly what they did. They didn't necessarily defeat him. Well, technically speaking, they did not defeat him. He did not take the loss in this one, but they're able to survive him long enough to get into the bullpen and score the eventual game-winning run on an RBI by Ty France. And a big reason for this, why they were able to be in that position to win that game, was Marco Gonzalez, who was fantastic in this one. You know, he's had kind of a rough year, up and down year, but in a couple of these big games, Marco has stepped up for the Mariners. He goes 10 swings and misses in this one, which is starting to become a little bit of a trend for Marco this year. He's actually missing quite a few bats this year. 6 2/3 innings, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, 5 hits. What did you see out of Marco?
Yeah, it was kind of a, to use a cliche, it was kind of a bulldog performance from Marco Gonzalez. It wasn't as though he was quite as good as he was back in late April against, I believe it was Houston. Yeah, he was dominant there. This time it was a little bit different. He gave up 5 hits. He did walk 3 guys. Gave up his fair share of hard contact as well. We were talking about looks like 9-10 hard hit balls. So he kind of had to pitch around it, but he did go 6 2/3. He did strike out 5. He was appropriately cautious when necessary and also aggressive when necessary. And it did not look like it was going to be that type of outing for Marco. He really struggled in the first, got a big strikeout and was able to get out of there with only allowing the 1 run. And he, along with a couple guys in the bullpen, really made it stick. So he was great. It was kind of classic Marco. We talk about Marco. Some people think he's a bust, or some people think he's a number 5. And he literally went toe to toe with arguably the best healthy pitcher in Major League Baseball. And ultimately, even though Scherzer doesn't get the loss, Marco doesn't get the win. Ultimately, he did outduel Max Scherzer, which is saying something. So Marco's a bulldog, and he kind of stepped up here, and he knew that he had to be darn near perfect with Max Scherzer on the other side. And to his credit, he more or less was, without even his best stuff, I would say. So it was a really good gritty performance, and getting that first one is huge, because now you kind of have, not necessarily house money, but you got the first one. So we know how from last year how that sets up your bullpen really well. You can kind of ebb and flow and decide, are we going to go really hard in on game 2, or are we going to kind of, we have a game in our back pocket, let's kind of hold back to game 3. Winning that first one is huge, and doing it against Scherzer is massive. It kind of buys you some breathing room the next night against Bassett. It set the whole thing up for Marco. Marco set the whole thing up for the Mariners, and it was, I still think it was probably a second best outing, but this one was pretty impressive for a completely opposite reason.
Yeah, I mean they needed it. They wouldn't have won this game without that kind of start from him. It, the timing of it couldn't have been any better considering who the Mariners were facing on the other end. And obviously scoring has just been pretty difficult for the Mariners for the most part, aside from yesterday and even to a certain degree Saturday as well. But they, going up against Scherzer, even the best lineups are going to struggle. So they needed Marco to basically pitch above his weight, and he did that and then some in this one. So let's cut to Saturday, because George Kirby made his second career start in this one. Wasn't fantastic, but also didn't get a ton of help from his teammates in this one either. 4 innings pitched, 3 runs, just one of them earned, 3 hits, a lot of hard contact. I believe 10 hard hits registered for him in this one. But like I said, only goes 4 innings. He threw 89 pitches. What did you see out of Kirby in his second start?
Yeah, it was a struggle, but also it, again, like you said, he really didn't get any help whatsoever. A ton of errors, a ton of misplayed balls, lots of guys left on. Like he wasn't set up for success. Give the Mets credit; they did work on his pitch count pretty well. And like you said, they did get quite a few hard contact. Only 1 strikeout for Kirby. He did walk his first guy, but he went 4 innings in New York against a good lineup. Gave up just 3 hits and only 1 earned run. It's pretty impressive for Kirby. Again, like it's not that he was great, but he was good enough. He kept him in that ball game. Seattle eventually would come back and tie that game, and Winker almost tied it again in the 9th. Foul ball by about 5-6 feet. So but he was very aggressive with the fastball again. But unlike last time against the Rays, the Mets were able to put the fastball in play. He threw 43 fastballs. He generated 26 swings, only 3 whiffs on that pitch. So really focused on the slider as a secondary pitch. Just didn't generate a tons of swing and misses. Actually, the changeup was probably his best pitch of the night, and he started to use it a little bit more towards the end. But the fastball was the difference here. The Mets were able to foul it off. They fouled off his fastball 14 times. So that's where the whiffs went for Kirby against Tampa Bay. It's kind of like we talked about last week. The Mets were going to make Kirby beat them with a pitch other than his fastball, and it was a good strategy. But Kirby almost kind of gritted his way through it, and he was fine. He was good enough to keep the Mariners in that game, and I think that's really all you can ask for Kirby.
So then finally yesterday with Robbie Ray, Ray had 27 swings and misses in this game. 27. Mm-hmm. That's nuts. That's like actually nuts. He had 22 in his last start, right? And we were like, wow. And then he somehow tops that. Yet the big inning got him again. In the 4th inning, he gives up 4 runs. He also gave up a home run to Francisco Lindor to start this game off. He goes 6 innings though, 5 runs all earned, 5 hits, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts. How is he going to be able to avoid this big inning? Because it continues to happen for him. Is there something that you're seeing in these particular innings? Because I know you watched back yesterday's game as well, kind of knowing what happened already because you were on the road. But in these big innings, have you seen something in particular that's leading to that happening for him, or is it just this weird thing that just continues to get him?
Yeah, I don't notice anything mechanically. That's not really my strong suit. But it does appear that it's becoming pretty easy to predict when it's going to happen. I know in this game in particular, it was the 4th inning that was the big inning, but you could kind of start to see him that cycle was going to start in the 3rd inning. He gave up a double, walked a guy. He was able to get out of it without giving up a run. But the next inning, he walked a couple guys. The fastball was up and away. He wasn't finishing, and that's usually a pretty bad sign for Ray. Is when the fastball starts to miss badly, up and away, means he's not finishing. His either shoulders flying open or he's just not finishing through the baseball. And it takes them usually 5-6 guys to get that back on track, and it's it. I don't want to say it's a problem as of yet, because again, aside from the fourth, aside from about a 6-hitter stretch, Robbie Ray was very, very good. But this is what 4 times in a row now. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's not a huge problem yet, but it is an area of concern and something he needs to get better at. So yeah, we'll see if he can make that adjustment.
All right. So again, the Mariners did win 2 of these 3 games, and there was some quality offensive performances, particularly yesterday. There was some decent pitching from the Mariners as well. We're going to be talking about if this is potentially a turning point for the Mariners, who have struggled leading into the series. It was their first series victory since April 23rd. It's been a long time. All right, so we're going to be getting into that in just a moment, but real quick, I want to tell you about our friends over at BetOnline. Our partner BetOnline continues to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. You're listening to Locked On Mariners. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. There are recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. So, to me, this weekend series against the Mets really feels like a turning point for the Mariners, or at least potentially a turning point for the Mariners, because you go into the series having made 8 roster moves, including the demotion of Jared Kelenic. It already seems like some of your offseason decisions have blown up in your face, particularly with Kelenic and relying on Kelenic heavily in the outfield, and we've talked a lot about that. But the Mariners, the reason why I feel that this is such a big turning point for them is because they did something in this series that they really haven't done much of this year. And that's they fought their way back into a couple of these games. The first game, they dropped 1-0 in the first inning, and it's like, okay, here we go. But then Marco kind of levels out and turned things around, and as we talked about, gave them a really strong performance, and allowed for them to get into that bullpen with the Mets and eventually win that game. Then Saturday night, they go down 4-1. And it's like, okay, because I don't know about you, Colby, but, last year when the Mariners fell behind even by 4 or 5 runs, even with the limited talent that they had on the roster, it was like, okay, I feel like they might be able to get back in this thing and make things interesting. This year, though, they fall behind by 2 or 3 runs, and I'm like, this is a wrap. Yeah. But it's 4-1 on Saturday, and it's like, all right, this game's over. The Mets won, whatever. We'll try to go for the series win on Sunday. But Jesse Winker hits a 3-run home run to tie things up. And yeah, the Mariners didn't get the job done that night, but that was a positive sign. And then yesterday, they were up 4-1. Roles kind of reversed in this situation. And then, as we talked about, Robbie Ray had the big inning bite him, and it becomes 5-4 Mets, and it's like, okay, well, now the Mets have gotten into, they're probably going to get into the bullpen soon. They built all this momentum. It's just, this is probably going to get out of hand here, and they had a chance to win the series, and they just let it slip through their fingers. But come the 6th inning, Ray leveled out a little bit and kept things at 5-4, and the Mariners stormed their way back. Julio Rodriguez knots things up with a 114-mile-per-hour exit velocity home run for his second career dinger. And then Cal Raleigh, of all people, it's a go-ahead 2-run home run. And then the Mariners did something again that they haven't really done for most of this year, and they played add-on with Julio Rodriguez's RBI single his next time through the order, and they needed that because Drew's second rider fell apart in the ninth inning. And Dio Castillo, who we have to give a special shout out to here, because he had been struggling mightily going into this game. And they call upon him with just one out, runners on second and third. Basically, anything into the gap, anything down the line is going to win this game for the Mets. And he comes through with 2 strikeouts on Starling Marte and Pete Alonso.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Alonso kind of helped him out a little bit there. Game probably should have been tied, but check swing, all that stuff. But the Mariners, again, clawed their way back. They did not, just kind of fall by the wayside. They did not just kind of, look, it's 5-4 now, it's over. They actually showed heartbeat. They showed what made the 2021 team so special. And so for me, with kind of doing this roster refresh that they did before Friday and having a series like this, especially where they kind of, they showed their personality a little bit to the Mets fans as well. But they showed some confidence. They showed some heartbeat. They showed some will. And this team has really been lacking that for the most part this year. Did this feel like a turning point to you as well?
It feels like it could be. Momentum only lasts as long as you make it. So, they get swept by the Blue Jays, and we don't really care about the last series. So, they got to continue it. But, it certainly could be. It certainly has a feel like maybe that was the case. It's also possible that maybe we just want it to be. Because it's, like you said, it's been 3 weeks since they won a series. But they did take down, the best team in the National League. At least, statistically the best team in the National League. Handed them their first series loss of the entire year, and did it in let's say chaotic fashion, because these are all one-run games. They easily could have gotten swept. They just as easily could have swept. So it was kind of a fun series. It was kind of weird. It kind of had a little bit of everything. It had the pitchers duel on Friday. Then it kind of had this. Kind of a late game heroics type of feel on Saturday, and then on Sunday, the Mariners just got out the bats and I think had 18 hits and they had to hang on at the end, and Steckenrider really couldn't get it done. Although to his credit, I mean, it's not like Steckenrider was getting bashed around the park. There was a ground ball at the middle that kind of took a funny hop on JP that could have been an out. There was. Mm-hmm. Nimmo kind of just slapped a double down the, beat the shift, slapped a double down the third base line that scored a run. So it's not like he was getting, waylaid all over the park. And then, Castillo comes in, throws 9 sliders, strikes out Marte, who is one of the tougher guys to strike out in baseball, and also Pete Alonso, who doesn't strike out as much as you think for a power hitter. He's about league average or slightly below league average in strikeouts, and he just throws 9 sliders, forgets the fastball. Blowers made an interesting point. The way the shadows were, across home plate or across the pitcher's mound, it probably made it really difficult for hitters to recognize spin, which is why we saw a couple of funky swings from Marte and Alonso. It's like it was fun because Sunday you got the bottom of the order going a little bit too. It wasn't just JP and Ty France and Adam Frazier. We saw contributions from Abraham Toro had a couple hits. Cal Raleigh, obviously the big home run, but Raleigh also, had another ball that was hit really hard. It was a double play. It was hit right at somebody, but that did get a run in. And he was very good behind the plate, especially in that ninth inning. And you kind of look at everybody up and down the line. Mike Ford had a big hit, even. And obviously Julio was kind of the star of the day. But you got contributions up and down. I think everybody in the starting lineup had a base hit in this game, at least one hit. So you just kind of got contributions up and down, and then your bullpen, it did enough, right? It was good enough, regardless of how it happens. Also, we should probably mention Paul Sewald had a pretty big series going up against his former team. Got 7 outs, didn't give up a base runner, and let Met fans know how he felt about the organization giving up on him. Quite well, and it was a fun series because it does feel like the Mariners were having a lot of fun, and it does feel like the Mets fans were, at least at the ballpark, were relatively good sports about it. I think the thing that they have with Winker is funny, and I think it's well done by both player and fans. It's kind of funny. And by the way, we should probably mention Jesse Winker. He is breaking out right now. It's not, in the month of May, which is again only 14 games at this point. Still, it's a super small sample, but the month of May is hitting 296, 333, 481. I mean, that's Winker. If you slap on another 30 points of on base percentage, that's who Jesse Winker has been his entire career. So he's in the midst of a breakout. Julio is broken out a few weeks ago, and he's kind of continuing it. He bounced back after some rough games on Friday and Saturday. And you're kind of starting to see Toro is starting to hit a little bit as well. You're kind of starting to see these guys start to hit, which is good because Frazier's kind of been up and down. JP has been he's been okay since he's returned. He hasn't been awful, but he hasn't been as good as he was in April, which we all knew was going to happen anyways. But the regression to being actually JP Crawford has started. But thankfully, again, Julio is really stepped up. Jesse Winker stepped up recently. Abraham Toro is driving the ball with a little bit more authority right now. He looks better and better at the plate. And so they are starting to get contributions from other places in the lineup. And that's what's going to make this team very dangerous, is if 5 through 9 can produce semi-regularly to complement 1 through 4.
Yeah, and you mentioned something a couple minutes ago that they look like they were having fun. And frankly, watching this team, particularly on the road, they don't look like they're having fun for the most part. It just seems like there's some energy lacking there. And like they've looked energetic, more so energetic at home, and I feel like they're feeding off the crowd. Jesse Winker talked about the whole electric factory thing and all that stuff, and like it just kind of feels like this team, body language wise, a little bit of a tale of two stories on at home and on the road, and we kind of saw them manufacture that energy this weekend and kind of feed off of one another, and also feed off of maybe some of their personal beefs, I guess, with the Mets and with Mets fans, particularly Sewald, particularly Winker. That was a lot of fun. Also, Chasen Shreve getting mad at Winker for looking at the ball a little too long on his 3-run home run, and then proceeds to give up a game-tying home run to Julio Rodriguez the next day. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it appears the Mariners have found the next Brooks Raley.
Yes. Cole Irvin, maybe also like Cole Irvin light.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we see the Mets again this year. I could be wrong.
No.
I don't think they come to Seattle. So, yeah.
Gotta tell you though, this would be a fun, this is completely
kind
out
of
there,
a
but
weird rivalry.
This would be a fun World Series matchup though, considering some of the it would never happen, but it would be a lot of fun considering the I mean, because we didn't even see Jarred Kelenic in this series, right?
It's true.
So if Kelenic was involved in this as well, I mean, just think about the storylines. Taijuan Walker on the other side,
there's been a lot of turnover between these two teams. I think this could be a fun little Seahawks versus Panthers rivalry where it's they shouldn't be rivals. They're on opposite sides of the country, but starting next year, they're going to play everybody at least once. And so with Winker and Sewald and I mean, I don't know, man, maybe there's so much turnover in baseball. It's really difficult to have, if you're not natural rivals, Yankees, Red Sox, whatever.
Right.
It's tough to generate the bad blood required, but this seems like it could be a fun rivalry, cross-country rivalry, because I thought the Mets fans were great at the ballpark. It seemed like they were having a lot of fun with it, more so than being angry. And I'm sure there was plenty of angry people there, but for the most part, it seemed like it was a fun kind of ribbing as opposed to a hate-filled.
Sure.
And so it wasn't quite that. Didn't get that vibe on Twitter, but from watching the games, it sure felt like that was kind of the vibe of the Mets fans this weekend. Was just kind of like, okay, we'll see, and then kind of laughing it off. It was a cool, fun series.
Yeah, very much in the spirit of the game. So the Mariners seem to have built some momentum here, but You said momentum is only as good as long as you maintain it. So hopefully they can maintain it going into a pretty tough series coming up with the Toronto Blue Jays starting tonight. We're going to be getting into that and getting into tonight's matchup between Chris Flexen and Yusei Kikuchi in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Built Bar. Imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing that was only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. That's what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built. I just received my birthday cake puffs and I have never had anything like this before. They're available right now and we can't promise that they will be there tomorrow. So go get them today at Built.com and make every day your birthday with Built's birthday cake puffs. Built has taken the delicious experience of biting into a fresh slice of birthday cake and robed it in 100% real chocolate, or white chocolate rather, and added sprinkles. And all Built puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. So go to Built.com and try some for yourself. Use promo code LOCKED15, that's LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. Again, that's LOCKED15 for 15% off your order at Built.com. So, some of you who've been around probably know that I don't live in the state of Washington. I live in Toronto. And the last time I saw the Mariners in person was August 25th, I believe, 2019. And in that game, Yusei Kikuchi threw a complete game shutout for the Seattle Mariners. Well, fast forward 3 years. A lot of stuff has happened in between those 3 years. We won't get into all that. But I'm going to be seeing Yusei Kikuchi again in person for my first time seeing the Mariners in person in 3 years. Except this time he's pitching for the Blue Jays. And hopefully this one will go a lot worse for him than the last time I saw him. Opposing him, Chris Flexen for the Mariners. Flexen has been solid here and there. We'll get into that in just a second. But this Blue Jays team is incredibly talented. They're probably a World Series contender, maybe not as currently constructed, but they certainly have a path to get in there. Obviously, you got guys like Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette and Teoscar Hernandez, who's just returned from injury. The pitching staff is pretty strong, especially with the addition of Kevin Gausman, despite losing Robbie Ray. And despite losing Marcus Semien, this offense really in general hasn't skipped a beat for the most part. Bo Bichette has kind of struggled a little bit. I did mention him earlier, but they've gotten some surprising contributions out of guys like Santiago Espinal. And the catching's been pretty good for them as well. So there's a lot to dive into here with this team. This is obviously one of the more important head-to-head matchups for the Mariners because tiebreakers are now in effect for determining playoff seeding, and there's no more game 163s. There's no more anything like that. It's just straight up head-to-head tiebreakers that matter. So this is a very, very important series for the Mariners, who are pretty much in line with where the Blue Jays might end up in the standings this year, at least as we project. They were one game apart last year, and obviously the big storyline going into this is COVID restrictions. Obviously, players have to be fully vaccinated to be eligible to play in Toronto. And we have a roster move from the Mariners. The Mariners had said leading up to today that they were expecting a couple guys to land on the restricted list. But right now we only know of one. Not sure if there's more to come. But right now we know of one. That's Drew Steckenrider, right-handed reliever, who obviously struggled in yesterday's matchup with the Mets. He's been placed on the restricted list, and Roenis Elias is back with Major League Ball Club after pitching pretty well down in Tacoma, coming off of Tommy John surgery. Hasn't pitched in the last couple years. Last time Elias pitched with the Mariners, he was traded to the Nationals, won a ring with them, even though he was unable to pitch in the postseason for the Nats. Obviously signed back with the Mariners, and last year got hurt, etc. Missed all of last year, but he's back. He's looking good, and now he's with the team. What are you hoping to see out of Elias? Do you think he might be able to stick, despite this being kind of a temporary call-up as it currently stands?
Yeah. So it's important to note that Elias right now doesn't count against the 40-man roster because he is essentially a temporary call-up. So he's not on the 40-man long term. They can send him back down. My understanding is they can send him back down after they leave Toronto and not have to put him through waivers or anything like that. Might be different for a veteran. I'm not 100% sure. The COVID rules are, at least public to the public, they are hard to find and hard to get an official breakdown of, which is exactly what you want in this type of situation. A lot of ambiguity. But for Elias, he's pitched okay in Tacoma. It's been a long road back from his Tommy John. He's been okay. He's gotten hit hard some. He's had some really good outings. He's had some really bad outings. But he's the same guy. It's fastball, curveball, a changeup every once in a while. It's nice because he can give you multiple innings. He actually did that a few times in Tacoma. He went more than 3, which should help. It's unfortunate that you're not going to have Steckenrider, but he just pitched 2 of the last 3 days. Now he gets kind of 3 days off to kind of reset. Let's say reset after his rough outing on Sunday. But yeah, Elias has gone 2 innings, 3 innings, 1 1/3, 2 innings this year. So he can kind of, he can give you multiple innings. He can go out there and be the guy to get the last out in the 5th when he's going up against one of the few lefties in the Blue Jays lineup. But he's also okay enough against righties. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. He's actually, most of his struggles have come in the month of May. So we'll see what happens with that. And really, it's been one outing on May 3rd. He got touched up for 4 earned in 2/3 of an inning. So for the most part, he's been okay. He is he is struggling a little bit right now. But yeah, you expect some length. You expect some relatively high floor out of Elias. And, we'll see if he even gets into a game. But with Swanson on the shelf now and Steckenrider not available and Seawald's pitched 2 of the last 3 days. Castillo, he was good on Sunday, but needs a few more of those outings before you kind of start to trust him again. I would say there's a pretty good chance Elias gets into this series.
So like you said, Blue Jays lineup very right-handed heavy. George Springer, been fantastic this season, 269, 328, 504 with a 140 WRC plus. Vlad Jr., 280, 352, 480, 140 WRC plus as well. He's Vlad Jr., doing Vlad Jr. stuff. Espinal, who I mentioned earlier, 282, 347, 445 with a 129 WRC plus. So they've been able to basically replace Marcus Semien, who's struggled this year. Obviously not getting the same exact production that Semien gave him last year, but comparing those two, it's like night and day right now as they currently stand. Zach Collins, who they brought over in a trade with the White Sox earlier this year, he's been decent, 99 WRC plus. Him and Alejandro Kirk present some problems out of that the catcher spot. But like I mentioned, there's also been some struggles from some guys like Bo Bichette, 80 WRC plus. Teoscar Hernandez, who's coming off of an injury, just an 87 WRC plus. Matt Chapman, who they brought over in a trade with the A's, 77 WRC plus.
That is shocking. Yes.
yes. Anyone who listened to any of our Fan Fiction Fridays, which included Chapman's name, will be very familiar with how we, and particularly this guy to my left or my right, however you're watching this, feels as well. So
I, for one, am shocked that Matt Chapman has continued to decline for the 3rd straight year. Who could have seen this coming?
So how are you feeling about Chris Flexen? Because it's not been great.
Not great.
So are we going leadoff home run for George Springer per usual?
No, actually, I think he's going to retire. Actually, what I think is he's going to strike out Springer on like 95 up. We're going to be like, oh, darn, Chris came to pitch. He got skipped kind of the last time through. He's well rested. And then, he'll give up like a, 3-run bomb before he gets out of the first. No, it's not a great matchup for Chris. And also, it's honestly not a great matchup for Logan Gilbert either. The Blue Jays love to hit the fastball and Gilbert loves to throw the fastball. So not a great matchup here for the Mariners currently, but they have some momentum. And, Chris Flexen, he continues to be, I think he's got 3 of the 5 best starts this year for the Mariners. And so it's one of those things where, never really know what you're going to get with Chris Flexen. Sometimes he looks like a high end 3 or even a low end 2, and then other times he is batting practice. To be generous, I mean, remember the Padres start he had last year. It's tough to know, and it kind of seems to ebb and flow, and it doesn't seem to matter how good the lineup is. It's for Chris, it's all going to come down to, can he command the cutter? It's going to be important for him to be able to run that off the outside corner, and then he's going to have one other pitch, at least one other that is average to above average today. Fastball is pretty much going to be what it is. So if the curveball or changeup are working, then he has a shot to get through 6, maybe 7, and keep the team in the game where they try to score off of Yusei, who, as we know, is definitely susceptible to bad outings. But he is on a little bit of a roll right now. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, Chris has got to just find a way to get this game into the 5th, 6th inning with giving the Mariners a chance, and he'll have done his job. 2 names to look at for this series, under the radar names, who could play a big role: Sergio Romo and Penn Murphy. A lot of righties in this lineup. They're probably going to have to face the Bichettes and the Vladdies in the 6th and the 7th inning, and they may be nursing a 1-run lead at that point, or they may be trying to keep it a 1-run game. But those 2 are going to play a big role if the Mariners are going to win this series. So,
Kikuchi, right now 26 innings pitched, 4.15 ERA, 5.69 xERA, 4.99 FIP. A lot of blue right now on his Baseball Savant page. 5th percentile in average exit velocity, 6th percentile in hard hit rate, 12th percentile in xWOBA, 12th percentile in xERA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just there's a lot of blue. You get the point. He's walking a lot of guys right now. 5.88 free passes per 9. So there's definitely an opportunity here, and it's certainly a much more favorable matchup for the Mariners than maybe the next 2. But we will get to those tomorrow. I'm kind of upset because, some of you may know that I'm not a huge fan of the Rogers Center, but when the roof is open, it's a little bit better. I can buy it as a baseball stadium. When the roof is closed, though, aesthetically, it's just lame. But this past weekend, the weather finally turned the corner here in Toronto. It was like 80 something degrees yesterday, sunny. It was beautiful. Today it's 56 and raining, so the roof is absolutely going to be closed. And just loving life right now. Hopefully the weather gets its stuff together the next 2 days so I can enjoy watching the Mariners in the sunshine and not in a crappy dome that's going to be torn down in a couple years, apparently.
It would truly be awful if it rained all week when Ty was going to the Mariners games. It would just break my heart.
Yeah, wouldn't it? All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Hopefully I can provide the Mariners with some good luck. They usually do pretty well when I'm there. Last couple times I've been there, like I said, Yusei Kikuchi, complete game shutout for the Mariners. Hopefully that does not happen for the Blue Jays tonight. James Paxton threw his no-hitter when I was in attendance as well. So, I'm just saying, just watch out. Chris Flexen's throwing a perfect game tonight. So that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLZ. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen of the day, just like you do here every day. Now make your second listen of the day the Locked On MLB podcast. That's where Paul Francis Sullivan, and please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the Major League's present and past. It's free wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. So have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we will see you tomorrow. Peace.